Most of the time, we just love a straightforward single-player adventure. Not a massive open world with freedom and hundreds of hours to spend. No, something linear, straightforward, with a consistent beginning, middle, and end. We're going to take a random look back at 20 awesome linear single-player games from the last 10 years. We could go beyond the last 10 years, but that would make for a really long video, so maybe we'll do that at some other point. So let's get started off with number 20. SOMA was a really interesting first-person survival horror game that released in 2015. Still to this day, I think incredibly underrated due to some really interesting story concepts, how it handles man versus machine, and the underwater setting. This game can be really creepy and unsettling with some weird, bizarre, robotic, aquatic creatures hunting you down, but it was really the concepts behind the game. You know, the loneliness of an underwater facility in pitch black darkness, machines possibly exhibiting human consciousness. There was a lot to it, especially the more you look into it, and it's from people who knew what they were doing. From Frictional Games, the people behind Amnesia. Without spoiling anything else, it's still really worth checking out if you never have. Next, over at number 19, we have a more obvious one. It's Uncharted 4. The last adventure of Nathan Drake, seemingly, is a really compelling one. It's definitely different from the bombastic nature of Uncharted 2 and 3, but it's still got a bunch of really cool, awesome action set pieces, but it's all centered around a story with a lot of heart, emotion, and human characters. Now, this is a linear game, but it's the first time an Uncharted game kind of opened up a little bit with you able to explore your surroundings a bit more, but still, this is a straightforward and well-paced adventure. It takes you to a lot of different places, it spans a bunch of different time periods, and even though it's a linear single-player game, it's actually a pretty lengthy one. This one will take you some time to really chew through. Not to mention the fact that it looks absolutely incredible, still to this day. Next, over at number 18, we have one of the undisputed champs. It's Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 has one of the most underrated single-player campaigns ever. I think Titanfall 2 really came out of nowhere because it was a time period where a lot of first-person shooter games were going fully multiplayer, and the ones that did have single-player campaigns were just kind of slapped together or really didn't get a lot of love. Titanfall 2 is not that. This is a good, straightforward, awesome adventure that builds out the world of Titanfall, establishes a real character and connection between the human pilot and the actual Titan machine, and besides just having some really tight, awesome shootouts in cool environments, it also manages to have some big, memorable moments and really cool action set pieces that we still think of to this day. A whole time travel sequence that is really unique. The game is just constantly introducing new things to you every hour as you play through this adventure. It's not the longest campaign in the world, but it is 100% the poster child for quality over quantity. So for that, we're always going to love Titanfall 2. Next up at number 17, we have Dishonored 2. We would have included the original Dishonored, but that missed our 10-year cutoff. Dishonored 2 really takes things and blows it out of the water. We really don't get games like this anymore, other than like Prey or kind of Deus Ex. Dishonored 2 is a really awesome immersive sim that gives you the freedom to tackle objectives however you want. Still, this is a pretty straightforward game, an adventure you see through from beginning to end with some really incredible moments, most particularly the Clockwork Mansion sequence. If you haven't seen that or experienced that yourself, look it up on YouTube because it is an incredible sequence of both gameplay, design, and just really cool visual trickery that will blow you away. The world that Corvo and Emily inhabit is really, really unique. It was in the first game, and even more so in this one as we go to more regions. Will we ever see a Dishonored 3? I don't know. I would love to see that, but at least we got the original two goats. Next, over at number 16, we have Alien Isolation, an adventure heavily inspired by other horror games at the time that were more focused around hide and seek, but this thing really capitalizes on the Alien franchise. It has some of the cooler high sci-fi elements of Aliens, with a lot of the horror and simplicity and darkness of the original Alien, really making it just a perfect adventure. It is incredibly challenging as you are hunted down by a singular alien that is hell-bent on your destruction. It's very tricky to outsmart this thing, but you're also encountering synthetics along the way, which makes things really interesting. You have a limited tool set, you only have a couple of ways to really survive and get through, but all of it just feels authentically alien. There's a reason why people keep going back to this one. People play it on harder difficulty modes, it's been modded, more recently it's gotten a VR version through mods. Alien Isolation is just a really awesome game. Next over at number 15, we have Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. They don't make a lot of action platformer mascot games anymore. We just don't see them. But thankfully, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart released, and it's awesome. While it does have some planet hopping and some freedom, like the previous Ratchet and Clank games, this is still a good, solid adventure from beginning to end. It introduces a new Lombax to the mix, who actually is an interesting character. She doesn't feel forced or shoehorned. And this adventure fits nicely into the Ratchet and Clank universe. If you actually care about these characters in this lore, they just do a lot of cool things with it. Plus, it's just a hell of a lot of fun to play, from like zipping between dimensions instantly to just new gadgets and guns and fast gameplay. It's awesome. Next over at number 14, we have Hi-Fi Rush. This game has recently gone multi-platform and everybody should check it out. If you like cartoons, anime, and action hack and slash games like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, and music, of course, then this is the game for you. It's a hybrid between, like I said, a Devil May Cry slashy combat and a rhythm-based beat 'em up. So the game encourages you to whack and hit and combo enemies on a beat for damage bonuses, and this really translates to everything else in the world. Everything is bouncing, everything is moving, and the boss battles, when tuned to the beat, are some of the coolest boss battle sequences we've experienced in a long time. This is a level-based, simple game. You play through each level, that's it. It's cut and dry, just like how they used to make them, but it feels absolutely new and fresh from its visual style to its rhythm-based gameplay. Hi-Fi Rush is another banger. Next over at number 13, believe it or not, we have The Last of Us Part 2. We would have included the original Last of Us, but, you know, not counting the re-releases, that game is beyond 10 years old, so we'll include The Last of Us Part 2. Not everybody loves this game. It has a lot of divisive story choices, of course, that have been hashed out to death. But this is still just a big old linear single-player adventure. Granted, there are parts where you can explore the environment. You know, they did this a little bit in Uncharted 4 and Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, but this is still really a compelling and long journey that you see through to the end. And it is a brutal end, that's for sure. Now, this is probably one of the longer linear adventures on this list. The Last of Us Part 2, whether you like it or not, does feel like a really long journey, a massive trek. It takes you to a lot of places, it has some scary horror elements, it has some beautiful locations, some crazy shootouts, creepy cults. This game has a lot. And if for some reason you've been living under a rock and you don't know what happens with this game, and you're going in blind, good luck, have fun. Next over at number 12, we have Mafia Definitive Edition. This is a remake of the classic original Mafia game, and believe it or not, this is actually a completely linear game. I know you're looking at it and you think it's like an open world Mafia City game, and while yes, you can drive around a city, it really all serves as set dressing for a completely straightforward linear adventure. A kind of rags to riches tale of a guy who ends up becoming a Mafia underling who rises to the top and ultimately flies too close to the sun. It's a tale as old as time, but it is a hell of a good one to play through with just gorgeous graphics, cool environments, charismatic characters, and exciting shootouts. There's nothing better than like a Tommy gun in a hotel ballroom. I say that as a diehard Mafia movie fan, but yeah, Mafia is definitely worth playing if you like the genre or if you just like a good single player adventure. You know, one that doesn't really overstay its welcome. Next over at number 11, we have Inside. This is the follow-up from the creators of Limbo. In a genre I kind of call, like, you know, character walks across a 2D plane in a 3-dimensional environment. You're a small character, essentially navigating a world from left to right, but there is so much more going on from a gameplay standpoint, a visual standpoint, and this, you're just a boy. Like, you're just a boy going through a weird world and weird, crazy shit happens. And I don't want to spoil it, but things get wild. It is a little abstract. It doesn't have any dialogue. It doesn't really have any complicated video game elements going on, but the game can still be challenging. There are moments where you have to really do stuff. And when you do win, when you finally actually get to the end of this adventure, it's gonna leave your jaw hanging open, believe me. It's fun enough too to go back and play through a second time to really see what you missed, because the game is just filled with rich creative detail. Inside is one of the best. We'd love to see it get a follow-up at some point. Next, over at number 10, we have Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. This is a very interesting and creative adventure. One woman's quest not only through a harsh, brutal world where you're killing ghouls and zombies with swords, but also a battle inside her head. This is somebody suffering with loss and psychosis, and the game works really hard to portray that in interesting and believable ways. And it really makes for an incredibly unique experience. By the end of this game, you'll probably end up just as exhausted as her, but there is some combat, there's some good sword fighting. It does get a little repetitive towards the end, but some of the scares, the visual elements, the sound design in this game make it an adventure worth experiencing. It's not super long, so if you haven't played it and you're getting ready for the sequel, there's definitely still time. Next, over at number 9, we have Psychonauts 2, another game where we just don't get games like this anymore. Fun, cartoony, creative adventures. Psychonauts 2 is a little more open, but it is still a game where you're platforming and you're playing through creative, brilliantly designed levels that are zany, weird, creepy, and funny. There is a lot of heart to this game, way more than you'd expect if you just looked at the box art or didn't know anything about it. If you are a 90s kid, you like cartoons, or maybe you played the original game and you haven't gotten to this one yet, you definitely should. Next, over at number 8, we have Sifu. This is a linear game if you're really good. Essentially, Sifu is a challenging, fun combat adventure that is incredibly challenging. It is kind of centered around roguelite elements with you dying and coming back to life and you aging, but we're making an exception for this game in particular just because, number 1, it's so good, but also because it is pretty simple. There's only a few levels, but getting through them is really, really rewarding and also engaging. It was an incredibly addictive experience the first time we played through it, and since it released, it's gotten a bunch of updates and different modes to make it easier for some people to play, to make it harder for some people to play. And when you strip away the complicated elements of dying, coming back, getting older, like the roguelite stuff, it is just a really good collection of a couple of good levels, great enemy designs, and really, really fun boss battles. As of right now, there is nothing else out there like Sifu, so that's why we're including it here. Next, over at number 7, we have the Dead Space Remake. This classic now survival horror game is about as linear as it gets. The remake did add a couple of moments and reasons to backtrack around the ship, explore a little bit more, but still, this is really just a linear narrative horror game, and it is one of the best. This remake didn't really rock the boat. It made the game absolutely gorgeous, tweaked a couple of things where it made sense, added things that really helped improve the experience, but it didn't forget or lose sight of what the original was at all, and the original was absolutely kick-ass. And now it's just better. You can blast through it in a couple of hours, and it is so good. Next, over at number 6, we have the Resident Evil games, of course. The Resident Evil 2 remake, the Resident Evil 4 remake, whatever you want to cover. The most recent Resident Evil games have been on a really good run, and they are typically linear, straightforward adventure games. Because it is a survival horror game, yes, by nature you are backtracking, you are wandering around looking for clues, but still, especially Resident Evil 4, it is briskly paced, always putting you in new scenarios, new areas, and the adventure just gets crazier and crazier as things move forward. That really makes it an adventure worth experiencing on its own, but whether it's the Resident Evil 2 remake, the 3 remake, or 4, they're just good single-player adventures top to bottom. They were originally, and now that they're remade, even more so. Next, over at number 5, we have Devil May Cry 5, another game where we just don't get them like this anymore. This is an awesome hack-and-slash combat adventure that is pure chaos from beginning to end. It is level-based, so there is no BS. You are hacking, slashing, comboing, blasting, shooting, whatever, high-scoring your way through this really weird, gross horror adventure with multiple playable characters that all have their own in-depth combat systems. The amount of variety here, the weapons between each character, the swapping, everything is just incredible. Devil May Cry 5's combat really is a fine-tuned, well-oiled machine. However you play it, whatever level of your skill is, the nuances can really be experienced here, and it's just a cool adventure. Next, over at number 4, we have Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. We're talking Sekiro today specifically because people would be mad if we didn't include a Souls-like game, but to be honest, they all have some degree of freedom to them and, you dying a million times. So if we're talking something more linear, I think Sekiro is arguably one of the more linear of From Software's games. There are some branches here and there, but this is just a straight up adventure where you don't create your own character. That's another thing here. We're not doing open-ended RPG. We're doing something more interesting here where you play as the wolf. You are a character with motivations, with a set play style, sort of, and it makes for a hell of an adventure. The variety here, from like environments to enemies, is pretty constant. It's like non-stop. The amount of new things you're introduced to consistently, from baddies to big bosses to just movesets and gameplay mechanics, it just makes it so much fun. It is absolutely challenging, arguably very brutal at times, but it is really, really unique if we're looking at the whole catalog of From Software's games. Next, over at number 3, we have Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. The original or new Wolfenstein game was absolutely incredible, and Wolfenstein 2 just went zanier and crazier. You play as BJ Blazkowicz, and he is just like a badass, almost like movie hero character archetype, but there are some subtleties to him and this adventure. It is a weird one, but it is a mostly linear adventure that is filled with memorable moments, some of which are just so out there. Like, this game is written like a comic book. It feels like a comic book where, like, even though it has like hyper realistic kind of graphics, there's so much zany shit that happens here, I don't want to spoil for you. It's not the longest thing in the world, but it is pretty challenging, but it is a ton of fun. It is an adventure worth experiencing. Where do they go from here? God knows. Next, over at number 2, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. While yes, a lot of other big superhero games like the Batman Arkham games or the Spider-Man games go open world, the Guardians of the Galaxy game keeps it really simple. It is a level-based adventure where you play as Star-Lord. You have control over your other Guardians, but you are going through an adventure that is just steeped in Marvel comic book stuff. I'm not talking Marvel movies, MCU stuff. I'm talking real good, silly, space galactic comic book stuff. It's a fun shoot-'em-up third-person adventure where you get to see a lot of planets and weird stuff, but it's a story that has a lot of heart. While it does have some archetypes and similarities to like James Gunn's movies, this game actually dives deeper on these characters in really, really interesting, heartfelt ways. This game gets emotional, but it's also cool as hell. It's got some good boss battles and a really awesome ending that you should experience. When this game was first announced, everybody thought it looked bad, and it turned out it was actually really awesome, so don't sleep on it. Now, down at number 1, we have the Plague Tale games, both a Plague Tale Innocence and a Plague Tale Requiem. These are linear, narrative, sort of stealth games where you play as Amicia and her brother Hugo, going through a plague-ridden Europe that is downright horrifying. And because you play as a young girl escorting a boy, you're not the most action-packed badass, so a lot of the times you need to stealth around and use the environment and your handy-dandy slingshot to get around both hordes of rats and the horrors of the plague, as well as soldiers hunting for you. The second game amps up the combat a little bit. As she gets older, she becomes more capable, but either way, gameplay-wise, these are fun, but it's really the story. It's these characters, it's this emotion, it's the bond between brother and sister, but also the horrors that are impacting this world that are really worth experiencing. There's not a lot of video game stories like this, certainly not anymore, but thankfully this studio is keeping that like AA tradition alive. These are great adventures. Now, those are 20 linear single-player games you shouldn't miss, but we got a couple of bonus ones we couldn't fit. The first is Evil West, just kind of a throwback to early 2000s games. This cowboy horror shoot-'em-up third-person action-adventure game is schlocky and perfect. Also, the Dark Pictures Anthology. These games are from the creators of Until Dawn, so it's like a linear horror adventure where your decisions matter, and they are worth experiencing despite their flaws. Of course, there are so many other games, though, that we couldn't squeeze on this list. We know we missed stuff. It's the nature of making these lists, so let us know in the comments your choices, your picks for some of the best linear games from the last 10 years. You know, we're not talking open world games or like endlessly replayable roguelites or roguelikes or anything like that. No, just a straight up old video game. If you got any picks, let us know in the comments, but if you like talking games with us every day, clicking the like button's all you gotta do to help us. It really helps us out. And if you're new, consider subscribing, maybe hitting that notification bell because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.